you start looking at his numbers and where they project to be.
It's freakish.
It
It really
really is freakish. And, we spoke about it briefly on Trade Center in a confirm or deny, like how you compare, if you were to score 70, how does it compare to Gretzky's 92 in the early 80s?
Right.
If he ended up with, 70 and 160 points, how does that compare to, 215 points, I think it was, for Gretzky?
Yeah.
I don't know, and I know there are websites where you can do that relative to era, and you can adjust to the era.
Yeah, era
and
adjusted,
and there is formula that you can apply that to. And Ray made the point on Friday that Gretzky was lapping the field. Well, McDavid is there too. I mean, McDavid is lapping the field in terms of points.
Yes.
And he's now lapping the field in terms of goals. Like, there are guys on his heels. He's not going to outscore anyone by 25 goals or anything like that.
Yeah.
But he's going to outscore them by, I think, double digits. And he's going to have, 30, 40 more points than anyone else?
Yes.
It feels that way anyway.
Wow.
It's crazy what he's doing.
It is. I said on SportsCenter last night, the closest comparison of what we've seen was Lemieux, or the last time we've seen this was Lemieux in 95-96, where he had 161 points. He had 69 goals, 92 assists for 161 points. Now, Lemieux was doing this, and I will take a shot. I mean, O was having fun with it on the panel when we did Trade Center, but goaltending is different. Goaltending is different from the mid-90s. And, that is probably the most evolved position in pro sports in the last 20 years is goaltending in the National Hockey League. So McDavid's doing it on goaltenders that, if you took Vasilevsky and put him in the 90s, like, it wouldn't be fair. It's just the way that the position's played nowadays. So comparison, I get it. And I'm not going to say, McDavid's better than Lemieux, better than Gretzky, all of that type of stuff. I'm not, because I never watched Bobby Orr live. And that's kind of what everyone talks about. We had Bobby Mack on our show the other day saying, like, Bobby Orr was so far ahead. That's what McDavid is right now. But that being said, it's pretty cool to witness him, like to lay eyes on him, to be in the building. I'll be in Edmonton next week. Like, I'm going to lay eyes on him again live. I saw him last weekend in Ottawa. He's going to be here in Toronto, this weekend?
Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday night.
Saturday
night. People in Toronto get an opportunity to lay eyes on a local kid who is, arguably the best player ever played, arguably.
Yes.
So,
no, that's, I think, really how to put it into perspective, or how I would put it into perspective, is I remember when the Oilers won the lottery, and when I knew he was going there, and all the hype and all the projection, and he's met the projection, if not exceeded the projection.
Right.
And at the time I said, what's crazy is he's going to an organization where it's impossible for him to be considered the greatest Oiler of all time.
Which,
it doesn't matter what he does. It's just, you're not going to beat Gretzky. Like, you can't beat him. And how many years was Gretzky there? 9 years, 10 years? He's not going to pass him, because Gretzky had 4 cups. His numbers are crazy, and it's not the same. Like, through 8, 9, 10 years, he will not. But if he stays in Edmonton for 15, could the longevity make it a conversation? I think that's possible. And I think the fact that it's possible makes it truly astonishing to me. Like, truly astonishing. And I can't speak for you're from Edmonton. You can't. I've never lived in Edmonton. I wasn't there in the 80s. I'm not there now. So I can't speak to how fans would speak on it. I think it'd be a fascinating chat, though. I think there'd be a great interview there between a 65-year-old Oiler fan and a 25-year-old Oiler fan. Because the 65-year-old's probably like Gretzky all day, don't even start. The 25-year-old's probably like McDavid. But he's 28 points up on second in the league in points. 28 points up on Draisaitl, and he's 10 goals up on Pasternak. Like, he could conceivably win the Rocket by 10+, and the Art Ross by 30+.
Yeah.
That's not far off what Gretzky was doing. I mean, Gretzky was lapping the field. But in this era, with more teams, more players, everyone skates well.
Play, systematic
play, short shifts, coaching, analysis, breakdown, goalies.
Yeah.
It's incredible what he's doing. It's truly one of the great seasons in NHL history.
It is.
It's one of the great seasons in NHL history.
I had somebody add in to me, like again, I'd have to go back and look. I should have, when somebody messaged me, looked it up. But like now there's overtime 3-on-3. There are some things where, there was ties back then. And like, there's a lot of different things that come into it. But if you're just looking from, like, let's do an 18 miles above the earth, looking down on it and going, hey, this is what Gretzky did in that era, what McDavid's doing in this era. It's impressive to witness. Like, that's where I come back to. I hate the comparison and be like, well, this guy was better. I do believe, though, Hayes, it would be a great conversation. I guarantee you, I could ask one of my buddy's dads, who literally are huge Oiler fans and grew up in the 80s and have been through everything from the minute that the Oilers arrived in Edmonton to where they are now, and watching the lean years, watching the first overalls, watching the cups, all of that. I would love to see where their head is at as far as like a 65-year-old, not the 25-year-old. 25-year-old doesn't know better. They don't know.
Didn't see it. Wasn't alive.
And there are people today like, Bobby Orr, well, that was that in that era. Like Bob McKenzie sitting beside us in the studio the other day, you could tell by his body language and the way he spoke that Bobby Orr was something special to him because of, Bobby Orr was right in the wheelhouse of Bob McKenzie. Yep. So he witnessed greatness live, like we are doing. And, 30 years from now, we will be telling our kids, our grandkids, I guess, our kids' going, I watched McDavid on a Saturday night in Toronto live,
and that's the truth. And I think it's also something to remember that when McDavid is all, has packed up his career, there will be another one.
Yep.
Right? He'll be different. Won't be the exact same. But the next one will be here. Whether it's in 10 years, 15, 30, 40, someone else will come where you'll say, wow, look at this kid. Like, look what he's doing and look what he's going to bring to the table. And exactly, I usually, rely on my dad for historical references in terms of just purely anecdotal, because, again, to your point, I can't break down what Gretzky looked like in 1983. I was born in 83. And I don't know that. I cannot definitively say. And even pumping it into a computer to me is cheap. Well, if you look at it relative to, you can't drop the mic on that, right? Like, you can't come up with a distinct opinion because of what the computer says McDavid's doing now and Gretzky did then. But I think you rely on people to just break down the buzz, the vibe. Right. And there's a couple things that I remember my dad telling me about Gretzky in particular. One, he's run a hockey pool for like 40 years. Yeah. And he said Gretzky at his height, he had to put a rule in that if you won the first pick, Gretzky was out of the pool. You couldn't take him because it wasn't fair. Whoever got him won the pool.
He went by 50 points.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think McDavid's far off. I'm not sure it's fair that he's included in hockey pools. Look at how insane that sounds, but I think it's true.
I never thought of it that way.
He shouldn't be allowed. It's not fair. If you have McDavid, you got a head start. It's like starting a marathon, 10 miles in.
I've never thought of it that way.
He should not be included. He should not be included. I think he deserves the Gretzky treatment in the 80s. And also just the buzz.
Right.
Like being in Toronto, growing up here as a kid, I remember, I do remember that. My dad going down there, he's like, Gretzky's in town. Like there was something, it was Gretzky's in town. You got to go. Yeah. And that was a kid. Southern Ontario guy, grew up down the road, played for the Young Nats in the GTHL. Everyone knew about him. He's Ontario's guy, and he was coming home. And McDavid, I think, is there for this generation where you're like, he's coming. He'll be here Saturday night, and it's a different vibe with him compared to everyone else.
Well, you're right. Like, think about it. You get Jason Robertson in a pool, and you're like, man, this guy's killing it. You love him. He's having amazing. He's got 38 goals, 42 assists, 80 points. McDavid's got 44 more points than him.
Right. And a lot more goals.
Like it's crazy. Like these pools, like I say, I'm not in them, but like when you look at it, you're right. It's not fair. It's not
take Draisaitl out, who also is creeping towards unfair.
He's got 96 points already. Nobody talks about him.
And he's riding shotgun. A lot of that is, the power play in Edmonton. And listen, they're not playing on the same line, but they feed off each other.
Sure,
you take him out, and it's even bigger. He's 36 points up on the third place guy, and that's Kucherov, who had 127 points and won the MVP a few years ago.
Yeah, McDavid's at that already, 124.
He's already there where Kucherov was. And remember, we were watching Kucherov. We're like, man, this guy is a freak.
Yeah.
Like an absolute freak this year. And that's where McDavid is at. And it just doesn't – it's like nothing can slow him down.